I'm Joni Ernst. I grew up castrating hogs on an Iowa farm.
If you are the sexual predator and sociopath who murdered my sister Lynette, and you come to my front door to do harm to my girls, I'm going to use my Glock to blow your balls off.
Some people see a dumpster fire and do nothing but watch the spectacle.
I'm Levi Tilleman. Washington needs more doers and innovators. It's incredibly painful, and now I just can't see anything.
Political campaigns. Every TV station's wet dream. If at times you're feeling blue, cheer up, because even with COVID-19, the sequel coming to a pool party near you this fall. What's that? Sorry, what are the numbers? Sorry, how many? Fuck. Okay. Even with COVID-19, the sequel coming to a pool party near you pretty much now, mass protests as a reaction to police brutality, mass unemployment, a looming eviction apocalypse, the rise of the Karens, and potential return of the bubonic plague. Sorry, I didn't mean to repeat myself on that last one. We have an election to look forward to in November, where we get to choose from two very exciting, I can get it, don't worry. Like, two very... Just roll the fucking intro. Welcome to Why You Should Give a Fuck, the show where we don't just have conversations about you, have them with you. Before I go any further, please do take the time. Hit some buttons below. There's a subscribe button, a like button. There's apparently a bell or something. I don't know. Just hit something. We greatly appreciate it. On with the show. We have a lot of things that need deciding upon, and we appoint representatives that make those decisions that we want them to make, allegedly. The candidates get a bunch of people together, Ocean's 11 style, and start plotting to win our vote. In order for us to get to know the candidates, they spend several months, sometimes years, zipping around, eating at diners, signing babies' foreheads, doing that weird non-pointing thing with their hands, all to try to convince us that they're not completely full of shit. Then and only then can we, the voting public, make smart, rational decisions about who to select as our local and national representatives, allegedly. Election season kicks off pretty much always. Ted Cruz, the person voted most likely to get the response Thursday night? Nah, I'm busy Thursday night. Friday night too. Pretty much every night of the week. I'm busy. Announced his run for the presidency a whopping 596 days before the 2016 election day. These year-long marathons can be broken down into primary elections, fight to the death within your own party, general elections, which are Mortal Kombat style party versus party battle royale, presidential elections, midterm elections, runoffs, which, side note, it'd be dope if these year-long campaigns ended with the candidates having a literal foot race against one another. Aside from some age and citizenship requirements, anybody can run for office. It's me winking, but more on that a little later from Genevieve. Campaigns are essentially financed by individuals or by non-individuals such as corporations, unions, political parties, PACs, super PACs, single candidate committees, legislative caucus committees, Wally, a stop sign, I don't know, which is clearly enough for a full episode on its own. But like the response I'd give to an ex that asks where I'm moving to, I'd say I'm on to different things. Another factor that contributes to election campaigns is name recognition. Even though there's more and more first-time runners winning races than there have been in a while, there's still an added benefit to people knowing your name. Shout out Alicia Keys. The song is still the shit. It's the reason for all those TV ads and billboards we all want to Sharpie, and those flyers that end up on our cars and doors that we've all cursed about. You know you have. It's part of the reason for why back in 2014, Congress had roughly a 14% approval rate and an incumbent re-election rate of 95%. Woof. This brings me to the part of the weird-ass campaign process that I want to focus on. Local elections. Admittedly, voting in local elections isn't as sexy as voting for national elections like the presidency, but it's arguably more important, especially to our day-to-day lives. Yet, as the numbers show, as a whole, we tend not to vote as much, especially when the presidency isn't involved. It's generally well known that people turn out in higher numbers for the presidential elections than they do for the midterms in between. Even though there was a near record turnout in the 2018 midterm elections, that was still about 10% lower than the total turnout in the 2016 presidential election. Even though voter suppression is clearly still a thing, another reason for the low numbers is people simply don't like to vote. Nearly 100 million people didn't vote in the 2016 election. According to studies, non-voters have less trust in the election systems and consume less news and information, except for the real news, of course. But, surprise, surprise, America has over 19,000 cities, towns, and villages. God damn, is that right? And they all have at least one Dunkin's. Alright. And they also all more or less have to make their individual decisions about what's best for their citizens. Every election cycle, citizens get to vote on governors, council members, mayors, congress members, the DA, school board members, yada yada. It's a lot of shit to decide on. In theory, our elected officials are supposed to represent a majority of us. But as The Hill puts it, when a large fraction of us fail to vote, of course, it's not a surprise when shit doesn't go our way. Alright, they didn't say that last part. If you don't think that local officials are important, I'm not sure there's been any other time in recent history to show us the exact opposite other than right now. Since the federal government, let's just say, not doing shit. You remember the song? The song that never ends? That's this fucking pandemic. It's the goddamn Lamb Chop song. So here we are again, talking about it. Like we've talked about before, COVID-19 has highlighted a lot about our society. And who we have as our elected officials is towards the top of that list, for better or for worse. Many decisions about the response to the pandemic takes place on a local level. From decisions about stay-at-home orders to when to reopen/close again because, we can't have nice things. School boards right now are making hard calls about how to exactly move forward. Even outside of the pandemic, a good portion of our tax funds go to funding education, which school boards get to decide how to spend. In the aftermath of George Floyd's murder at the knee and inaction of Minneapolis police accountability and funding are a large part of the political conversations right now. Although the increased use of federal programs is concerning, a bulk of decisions concerning police budgets are made at the state and local levels. They also decide how police are trained and how they actually police themselves, assuming that even happens. On top of that, local prosecutors and the district attorney are some of the most powerful people when it comes to the criminal justice system and deciding who gets locked up and who doesn't. Here's why you should give a fuck. Making decisions about who should be elected at our state and local levels is hard enough, and that's even if we had all the information at our fingertips. We definitely don't, though. In order to get information on the candidates, especially those at a state and local level, we have to use a Angelina Jolie family photo level mix of news outlets, social media like Twitter, and if they're over the age of 80, Facebook, and websites like Ballotpedia to find information on candidates, especially if they aren't already well known. We can also find groups that run candidates that mirror our politics. But I don't know. Given the importance of everything, maybe it shouldn't be that hard. Call me crazy. One might suspect, perhaps, it's that way on purpose. Because of that, and, general who gives a fuck about politics, according to a Hopkins survey, about 1/3 of Americans can't name their governor, and another 80% can't name their state legislators. That's even after they got elected. I know if I had to pick Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen out of a lineup to save my life, I would expect my family to give a touching eulogy. These representatives are voted in and make changes to our lives directly, whether we are part of the process or not. And maybe voting at times is a crapshoot no matter what we do. But if we don't go out of our way to find out who these people are and choose to support them or not support them, to put our money behind them or not put our money behind them, then it becomes a lot harder to even have the possibility of seeing the changes we want to have happen become permanent. That's why you should give a fuck.
When you think about the type of person who typically runs for elected office, what usually comes to mind? Are they wealthy, university educated, white, male? Well, if so, you wouldn't be so far off from reality. A Pew Research analysis shows that men, whites, and postgrads are disproportionately likely to have sought public office, with men making up 49% of the general public, but 75% of candidates for office. In recent years, a greater variety of people have been running for office. For example, the number of women of color running for Congress increased by 75%. Meanwhile, there was an actual drop of about 13% in white males seeking office for Congress. Everyone draws from their lived experiences, past histories, or prior knowledge, which influences the way they think about certain topics or come to conclusions and make decisions. Logically, political candidates running campaigns would be no different. That being said, It's not uncommon to feel like the people running for elected office are out of touch with the day-to-day challenges that impact us. As a response, people have begun running on progressive platforms targeting the middle and working class. We have seen high-profile figures like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar not only running for office, but winning. Most likely winning because they are campaigning on policies targeting a large portion of the American public. Gallup found that 40% of people considered themselves to be in the middle class, and 31% of respondents saying that they were in the working class. That's 71% of people in these two groups alone. I spoke with Nabila Islam, a former US House of Representatives candidate for Georgia's 7th District, to talk about why she ran for office and what it was like campaigning as a person from the working class.
One of the things that really propelled me to run is the story of my mother. You know, she's been working low-wage jobs all her life, and one of them was being an order puller at a warehouse. So my mom was picking up boxes and putting them on trucks, and after 14 years, my mom suffered from 2 herniated discs. And instead of the insurance company, you know, giving her the benefit, paying her the benefits that she had a right to, they tried to deny her. They tried to take her benefits away from her. So at the age of 17, I'm in high school. I don't really understand the healthcare system, but I remember that system was wrong. So I got a lawyer. I translated phone calls for my mom. My mom's an immigrant from Bangladesh. I went to every meeting with her. We sued the insurance company and we won. But no one should have to go through that in the richest country in the world. So, I ran for Congress to give, my community a voice that it's never had, and run on, making sure that everyone has healthcare and that the cost should never seek you from being able to seek care.
And while people usually have personal experiences that push them to think about running for office financially is usually not that easy.
Look, right now, the current system that we have wasn't designed for working class people. Running for Congress is cost prohibitive. And in order to be successful, this is something you have to do full time. And for working people, they have to work 10 times harder. I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a bunch of millionaire friends I can just call up and be like, hey, can you give me $5,600? It takes time, it takes money in order to get your message out for people to know who you are.
Running for office isn't cheap. A report shows that candidates who won House seats in the US Congress, for example, had on average nearly $1.7 million in campaign contributions. Islam said she personally struggled with affording health insurance due to the high cost of running for office. During her campaign, she called on the Federal Elections Committee, a government agency in charge of enforcing campaign finance law, to allow candidates to use campaign funds for health insurance, which the government currently doesn't allow. She talked about a possible solution to aid working class individuals who wanted to run for office.
I think something that would be transformational would be as if the FEC would allow candidates to take out a stipend, a living stipend, so that they can, pay for monthly costs in order to run for office full time. And I think that would make it a more even playing field. Don't get me wrong, it's still harder when you're a working class candidate, but we should be able to remove the barriers so that more candidates that are actually from our communities and reflect our communities are the people that are at the table.
When asked what does it say about the US when a majority of people are from the working and middle class community, but their access to run for office is limited due to money, this is what Islam had to say.
Our priorities are wrong, all right? Our system is broken. When 50% of Congress are millionaires, when less than 25% of Congress are women, when less than 10% are women of color, that doesn't look like America. Something is fundamentally wrong here. We need people from within our communities representing us. Because when we do that, we'll have leaders at the table with skin in the game. When this pandemic was happening, my mom lost her job that was paying her $14 an hour. I knew people that lost their health care. People in Congress, I don't know if their mom lost their, hourly job, or if their friend lost their health care. They don't get it. There is a disconnect. And until we're able to bridge that disconnect, we're going to continue to see politicians not understanding the suffering that is happening right here on the ground.
Although it isn't easy, Islam still encourages people to run for office.
Please do it. We need you. So, look, it's going to be harder for us. The system wasn't designed to uplift our voices, and that's why we're going to have to make them listen to us. When I first When I was thinking about running, I had tons of people tell me, don't do it, run for city council. Why am I not worthy of running for Congress? Why shouldn't Congress look like our black and brown faces? Why shouldn't someone from a working class platform be able to have, hold a position of power to give their community a voice? Now more than ever, we are needed at the table.
You should give a fuck because diversity, whether it be race, gender, or class, matters. The fact that it's mostly white, upper-class males seeking political office highlights a key reason why issues in our politics continue. The decision makers have either not experienced, are not aware, or purposely don't care about issues impacting communities they simply aren't a part of. If you want to be more represented in politics, run for office. Encourage your friends to run for office. The more people that participate, the more representative our politics will be in this country.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to the part of the show where, again, we don't just talk about you, that we talk to you. So I am, of course, your humble co-host, Tuni Ngufulaju, joined by...
I'm your co-host, Genevieve.
Yeah, and this week we're doing a little different. We're trying something a little different here. So this week we're essentially mining some of your comments, and then also mining some of your comments from last week's episode, and then talking about some of our thought processes for this week's episode. Let's just jump into it. Last week we did an episode on voter rights. And we dived into a lot of different aspects of it. One of the more interesting things that came of it was that we didn't talk about in the episode the Electoral College. And that seemed to be a thing that people were pretty hot and heavy about in the comment section. Like we have this one comment here from, and we're definitely going to mispronounce these names as we go along, but we have Gates of Daya? I don't know. Osco. Sorry that I mispronounced your name there, but this person says, I wish the Electoral College was done away with so the popular vote could reign. That's true democracy on that front. So for one, thank you for the comment. We appreciate the comments. Keep them coming. We'll of course, like I said, try to fold a lot of those into the show, especially this block. But to give you guys some insight into some like what our thought process is. Mine, for instance, I didn't talk about the Electoral College, not because it's not a big issue, but because I don't know. I just felt like there's a lot of things that are within our control. And I think that that's not necessarily one of them. Of course, any sort of systemic change seems to be, or oftentimes is fueled by the people, right? So, if there's this massive upswell from people about, kind of doing away with the Electoral College, then it pushes it that much further, ahead in terms of actually happening. But I just didn't feel like that was one of the things that was directly within our control right now of trying to sort of institute. So, just didn't talk about it. So how'd you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. Like, obviously, it's a very pressing topic when it comes to voting, but like you said, kind of like the reality of it actually happening is very unlikely. So you need like 2/3 of the House and the Senate in order to get rid of the Electoral College, in addition to 3/4 of the state. The way that politics is going right now does not seem likely by any means. I don't think anyone wants to come together right now. So we figured, there are a little bit more pressing topics that are more so in our control, like voter ID laws and voter suppression, that we can actually push to have real change. And that's something that we really want to promote on the show, is actually getting things to like legitimately change, and not pushing things that have a very low likelihood of actually happening. So
and I know that this past more recently, I think it was like a day or two ago, the Supreme Court passed down a ruling that actually was relating to Electoral College. But again, like I just don't think that that's and that maybe I'm wrong, and feel free, which I'm sure you guys will tell me that I'm wrong in the comment section. But anyways, this week, let's talk about some of our thought processes for this particular episode, for this week. This week we talked about a topic that I think is a very interesting and timely topic, is that of campaigns, political campaigns. And where I sort of explored is the area of local elections, that the campaigns that are run on that level. And I thought it was important to talk about that because I don't think it gets enough shine, in the glitz and glamour that is, our politics these days. I don't think local politics really gets the love it deserves, even though it's extremely important. And so that's why I decided to focus on it. And also too, I just have a curiosity. Like, I don't know that much about our local politics here in Baltimore. When it came time to decide, for our mayor, I'll be honest with you. Here's me admitting a shameful fact. I didn't know that much about Brandon Scott, or and I think I wasn't really that into politics when Sheila Dixon had her heyday here in Baltimore. So yeah, I thought it was a really interesting topic to kind of explore. How'd you approach this week's episode?
Yeah, so for this week's episode, I talked about the types of people running for office, for elected office. Something that I personally noticed was that there were not so many women running for office, not so many people of color running for office. And I kind of wanted to explore why that was. Because, for example, women make up 51% of the population, but only a smaller percentage of, House and Senate. So I kind of wanted to know, why is that? Women have a voice, so why are they not wanting to get more involved in politics? So I just wanted to explore that.
Yeah. Which is, that kind of leads me to something that I didn't necessarily talk about in the actual segment, that I did, but it's something that I think is actually really critical, is looking at, that local races are, extremely important, and you can tell that by a lot of these sort of victories from progressive candidates, where just a few years ago these weren't victories that they were getting. So that the big buzz right now is about Jamal Bowman, who he beat, I think it was a 16-term incumbent. I think it was Elliot Engel, who he defeated in New York's 16th district. One thing that I did talk about was name recognition. That's a reason why a lot of these sort of incumbents are, do they just win year after year, is because people just know them and they say, okay, look, I know you're doing a shitty job, but we're just going to go with you again because that's all I know, and we're nothing if not, habitual creatures. And that sounded weird, even just me saying it. So I'll try not to say that again, but we make it a habit of doing things, repetitively, just because that's what we know. And so it's interesting to watch people like Jamal Bowman, of course, being in New York, of course, the person who's coming out of New York, who can be sort of the poster child for, and not child, she's a grown adult, but you have AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who of course kind of broke the seal when it comes to kind of this progressive wave that we're seeing, both from the 2018 midterms to now. So yeah, it's really interesting to kind of see that the rise of these progressives, and there's a whole bunch of questions about why that's happening, and I think it might be because people are tired of dealing with the same old same, and people who get too cozy to the other side of the aisle and vote more conservatively than the people would actually demand for, especially in this sort of populist time we're in.
And I'm curious, do you think that there's going to be more of a backlash to the progressives? You're going to see a rise in more conservatives running? Because I don't know, I don't think I've really seen that as a response to like a lot of progressives running?
I think you're going to see a lot of you're going to see a lot of people trying to mimic sort of this progressive wave, and the term populist, just like I said before, gets sort of like thrown around a lot, and so I think you're going to see maybe some conservatives try to mimic that sort of like populist angle of speaking to things that people actually give a shit about, instead of just kind of giving the same old, party lines without, backing them up or even being connected to actual people in terms of what they want. I think there's this one conservative, and I forget his name, but I was just seeing a couple stories about him, that he's sort of the new, kind of it child on the conservative side of the aisle. And he's, from what I understand, coming from a more populist angle. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that as people start waking up to like, hey, if you're not talking about shit that matters to us, then look, we're not going to fucking vote for you. This isn't, the days of the Orrin Hatches of the world. They're done, and I think that as people start to understand a little bit more about politics and start to say, hey, we can make the system work for us. I think that you're going to see the candidates change accordingly, because they're going to have to in order to get voted into office.
Yeah, I think definitely people are having like wake up calls and eye opening experiences, because, like the COVID situation is highlighting, in particular, it's highlighting a lot of issues within the system that maybe people haven't really noticed before, that they've been able to get away with. But yeah, like it's highlighting a lot of big issues, and, progressive candidates, as we've seen, are really tackling those issues head on. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there anywhere we disagree? Because I know that's a big thing, right? But is there anywhere we disagree in terms of what we think? Like, so for instance, I take the angle that we, the people, need to sort of like educate ourselves in terms of trying to find out information about some of these candidates. And I know maybe some pushback for that can be, well, hey, the system's created so that we don't have as much input, and we don't have as much information into a lot of these candidates as we should have. Is that how you view it, or do you view it any differently than that?
I mean, I feel like people do need to take a little bit more personal responsibility when it comes to finding out what's actually going on. You can't really be expecting to be like fed the information. And I think a lot of the times people are just like, oh, like they'll start to do their research around election time, which is very problematic. It's better to follow it throughout the entire cycle than waiting until, like that Tuesday in November to, cast your vote, or whenever election day is.
Now, I'll push back against that a little bit in that,
Okay.
people don't have time, to follow.
But it's so important though. Like, I feel like it's so important that we kind of have to make some time. Like, I get it. Like, people work, people are busy, but if this is something that's directly going to affect your life, like anything, like if you knew something was going to happen to your house and the next day, like the roof was going to cave in, you're not going to just push it away because, you have work to do. You're going to address that problem because it's going to affect you imminently, right?
Don't you wish that on me, Ricky Bobby? Don't you wish that on me?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The roof being on fire. Yeah, no, and I get where you're coming from, and honestly, I kind of advocate for that, in not just the section I did earlier, but just overall, I think people should definitely try to educate themselves. But I think the problem is that if you've got a full life to live and you've got a million other things going on, it would be great if there was like a go-to place to find out all the information you can about a candidate. And I don't just mean their platform, because if you go to their website you can just find out their platform, but I mean just like the nitty-gritty stuff. Like, there's just so many different things about candidates that you then find out on the back end. You're like, oh shit, like, oh, this person, I don't know, went to jail for like extortion or something. I don't know,
Right,
something wild,
right.
you know? And you're just like, wait, what? Like, it would be great if I would have found that information. It seems like there's some people who are in the know, like, oh, this person, oh no, yeah, you don't want to mess with them. They're, you know, they, you know, like to drown cats or something. I don't know. And so it'd be great if there was like one place to actually go and see that information. And I guess it might be a little tough to do because some of the information can be like, all right, maybe this isn't relevant, and who gets to decide what's relevant and what's not relevant. But yeah, it's a tough task, but I think, you know, broadly speaking, I think it can be way, way, way better, and it can be way more centralized than what it is now.
And I think this is where like the job of the media plays in. A lot of the times I see people watching like cable news, like let's talk about like national races. And the way that the reporters will cover it, or the way that the commentators will cover it, is so superficial. They'll pick like the tiniest thing to say, like, does this person look presidential? Like, is this person electable? Would I get a beer with them? Like, that doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Well, thank God Chris Matthews is gone, so no more, or at least we shouldn't hear it as much, right? He's on MSNBC all the time saying, I don't know if I'd like to go grab a beer with this guy. Like,
I'm like, I want to know if you're going to raise the interest rates on my student loans. Like, that's what I'm actually concerned about here, not the beer situation. But yeah, I mean, it's a big part of it is on the media. Like, they need to be actually asking the right questions. Like, you see this during like debates, they ask such superficial, irrelevant questions. And, you know, we need to dig down more on policy. That's what people are curious about, because they, at the end of the day, they want to know, like, what are your actual plans? Like, they don't want to hear some colorful language of, I aspire for America to be great and we're all one and kumbaya. Like, that's not what people want to hear, and that's not what people need to hear. So we kind of have to hold the media accountable to push them to ask the right questions if they're not going to do it themselves.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about that is like, I think sometimes maybe they do, but sometimes what the problem is that then they like bury it all in this like technical jargon of like, you know, just using big fancy words, or, you know, it's just like a failure to like communicate. Like they might have like actually a pretty decent idea, but then, you know, it just gets buried under all this and I don't know, maybe I'm the one who's, you know, maybe a little dense. So it wouldn't be the first time I'd be you know, accused of that, but you know, I just feel like sometimes they just, where they can make something simple, they make it unnecessarily complicated, and one might, you know, wonder if that's on purpose or not. But in any event, please, ladies and gentlemen, leave your comments below about, you know, whatever you feel of this week's episode, whether it's the first section, second section, or even this section. Let us know what you think, because again, we want to have not just conversations about you, but with you. So the more comments you leave, there's more of a chance, of course, that we'll talk about it here on the show next week as a recap of this week's episode. So with all that being said, I think we got to go get the hell out of here. We got things to do. Just kidding. I'm probably going to go to sleep. So yeah, we'll get out of here. Genevieve, hit that usual sign off.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to catch us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Time for those of you on the wrong coast. Thanks again for watching. Peace.
Ditto. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen. We out.